All right, we're going to go ahead and call to order the meeting of the Zionsville Board of Parks and Recreation for Wednesday, February 8th. We'll take roll. Vice President Jill Pack.
Here.
Secretary John Salowitz.
Here.
Board Member Sarah Moore.
Here.
Chris Barksdale.
Here.
Ryan Cambridge.
Here.
All right, we have 6 people present tonight. We have a quorum. We will continue. The first item on the agenda is the approval of January 11th minutes. Has everyone had a chance to take a look at the minutes from January 11th?
Yes.
Does anybody have any questions or concerns? Can I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Ryan Cambridge makes the motion. Sarah Moore seconds. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Let the record show that that passes unanimously. All right, the next item on the agenda is public presentations and comments. We are going to have a public hearing later on the Carpenter Nature Preserve issues. So if anybody has any comments on something not related to the Carpenter Nature Preserve, now would be the time to come up and speak. Is there anybody that has any public comments? Yes. Rick, come on over to the podium. And please give us your name and address, please.
Richard Hypes, 9150 East 600 South, Zionsville. Sure. Last year, we had a meeting after winter.
Rick, can you speak into the mic and we can't hear you?
I'm just asking, last year, after Winterfest, we had meeting. And he said it was $6.12, I believe, per town resident. I just wondered what 22 cost us.
All right, well, we're going to get to that later. We're going to have a presentation on the Winterfest.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought it was already been done since we did it in January last year.
Yeah, we were still putting together the numbers. We'll have that tonight.
Oh, great.
Okay, anybody else? All right, then we'll continue along with the agenda here. The next item is the Pathways Committee update. Sarah Moore is our liaison of the Pathways Committee. Apparently, there's not been a meeting since our last meeting, but you do have some news to share.
Okay, so I will be leaving the Parks Board and the Pathways Committee as of the end of March 31st. And so we have found a replacement for the Pathways Committee, and that will be Chris Barksdale. And I will be going with her to the next upcoming Pathways Committee so that we can get her acclimated to the work.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda, we're moving into the staff reports, and we'll start with our superintendent, Jared Logsdon. Jared.
Thank you, John. Just one item to highlight from the superintendent report, just an update on the 5-year master plan. So those initial findings, as you recall, were presented to this body as well as the town council. So that document in its draft form is now before the DNR, who will review it and provide suggestions and comments. Once those comments are received back, it will go before this board, plan commission, and then the town council for final adoption. So just wanted to let you know kind of the tail end of that process for getting it adopted into our comprehensive plan. And that is all from the superintendent report.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the Director of Maintenance Services, Chris Flanagan, stepping to the microphone. Hey, Chris.
All righty, so for January staffing reports, we welcomed 2 part-time maintenance technicians. Ian started on the 10th, and Jacob started on the 26th. Staff used 36 hours of paid time off, and there were 32 hours of administrative leave. We had 1 instance of graffiti at Overly Warman Park. It only took about 1.5 man hours to get that repaired. Our team lead, Will, has been spending his time over the last few weeks helping train the new part-time techs in their rounds and their routine duties and overall getting them acclimated to their new positions. Happy to say they're both doing very well. Most of the month of January was really spent handling snow and ice ordinances since we did get a few winter storms. That kind of slowed us down on our Mulberry Fields Winterfest breakdown between weather and needing to wait on equipment that we can use from streets. That's kind of stunted us, but we've had a turn recently and the crews are making good progress on that again. Other than that, outside of snow and ice ordinances, we really spent a lot of time clearing fallen trees in Overly Warm and Starkey. We had a couple at Heritage, I believe it was, and along the Big Four Rail Trail. And then we also did we cleaned up some dumping that had occurred at Overly Warm Park as well. And at Elm Street Green, one of our technicians had to spend about an entire day cleaning up those little Orbeez, the water Orbeez beads that you see. There must have been a party out there or something. They were scattered in piles everywhere. It took about the majority of the day. Other than that, that's really about it.
Anybody have any
Nice, easy
questions for Chris? Comments? All right. Thank you,
very
Chris.
much.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is Director of Recreation Services, Mindy Murdoch.
Hey, good evening, everyone. So January, we're kicking off 2023 with some fun and actually very busy January. We had over 1,200 people walk through the nature center. So that's not too bad for January when the weather wasn't always the best. Just a couple highlights for some of the programming. We started our Indiana Master Naturalist. Actually started at the end of January. So that first class, we had 28 of the 30 participants, but it is a full class and it will go until early May. So everyone seemed to enjoy the first presentation, and the next one is actually, they're talking with birds with Brian from Wild Birds Unlimited, who's going to be presenting. So it's nice to get to see that and something new and different. We're learning things as we go along with that one. Another highlight is we started with our partnership with Boys and Girls Club, actually offering programming during the day at the Boys and Girls Club. So Wendy has started she had her Little Sprouts in January, as well as some, this month is some indoor pickleball introductions, and her little junior yogis are also meeting there. So far it's been working as a great partnership. It's nice to have a place to go in addition to the library, because we utilize that quite a bit as well, but so that we can do some programming even in the winter months. And then we had our second Zionsville puzzle swap. So we had 162 people walk through the swap this year. We more than doubled the number of puzzles. We actually had 656 puzzles that we put out. Last year was a little over 300, but everyone had a blast. And I think people are starting to put it on their calendar for next year. So we will definitely do that one again. We also, the big one for January was me and the staff sat down. We planned out all of our spring activities. So there's over 70 various programs and events, including Party in the Park and Green Fest for this spring. And so those will be going out on Friday. Actually just sent the activity guide to the printer. So they'll be going out email, and then we'll have the print materials available for people to pick up. And then in addition to that, we sat down and we planned out our camps. And so we have 16 camps this year, similar to last year, a little bit different though, that we have more week-long camps that we're offering, as well as we will be doing an Indiana Master Naturalist Junior Camp towards the end of summer. So some different highlights. But unless you guys have any questions, that's it.
It says here partially funded by the Optimist Club.
Yes, the Optimist Club did provide, so they're covering half the cost, so that because the way the Indian Master Naturalist is, that camp is actually twice as long as our normal camps. And so they're covering half the cost. So it will cost the same as our regular camps for the kids to attend. So.
Become a good partner, the Optimist
Yes.
Club. We appreciate them. And also, you didn't mention here, what's also on the list is that you and Rachel were selected to present in the National Association for Interpretation Regional Conference.
We did. I was going to bring that up in March when we actually do talk. So,
Okay.
but
okay.
yes, both Rachel and I will be presenting at the regional NAI. And we actually found out yesterday, Rachel and I had nominated Sierra for the NAI New Interpreter Award, and she actually won that award. So she will be receiving that award in March. So we'll have highlights for that one. I'll have some pictures, hopefully.
That's a bit of a feather in our cap. I think that's
That's
nice.
right.
All right. Thank you. Anybody have any questions or comments for Mindy?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mindy. All right, the next item on the agenda is the golf course. I see that Mike is not in the house, but Jared is, and I think there's just a short report on the golf course right now, right?
Yep, short report on the golf course. So far this season, in the report, you saw that there was 20 season passes sold. As of today, that is up to 33. So anticipating potentially a record year on season passes. And we are anticipating a early to mid-March opening for the course as well. So everything's looking good for this season.
What a wonderful world that would be if that takes place. Thank you, Jared. All right, any questions on the golf course real quick? No, we're good? Okay. Next item on the agenda, our Parks Attorney report. Amy?
Sure. I've been working regularly with Jared on a number of items, but I don't have anything in particular to comment on outside of the items that we're going to be addressing later on in the meeting through new business and
Okay.
old business.
Great. No attorney questions, I take it? No? Okay. All right, let's move on then to new business. And the first item in new business is the first public hearing on the declaratory resolution and bonds for Carpenter Nature Preserve. We're going to have two public hearings tonight relative to the Carpenter Nature Preserve. And our legal counsel, Amy, is going to explain what this means, what the first one means, and then the reason that we're holding this hearing tonight.
Sure. Yes. So John will open the first public hearing, and the first one is to receive comment on the declaratory resolution for the Carpenter Nature Preserve project, which was approved by the Park Board at your last January 18th Park Board meeting, and the issuance of the bonds for the Carpenter Nature Preserve project.
Okay. All right. Here are the rules. If you wish to speak, we're going to ask you to come to the microphone. You give us your name and address. You'll have 3 minutes to make a statement. If you have any questions, we can address those after everyone speaks. We're not going to get into a back and forth during the times of the presentation. So do we have anybody in the audience tonight that would like to come up and speak in the first public hearing, that one being on the declaratory resolution and bonds for the Carpenter Nature Preserve? Okay, it appears we have no one. There's no one online that wants to speak. Okay, so apparently we have no one wanting to come up and make a statement. So we just close that out. Amy, is that what we do?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to close out the hearing on the declaratory resolution and bonds for the Carpenter Nature Preserve. All right, also tonight, for the record, the second public hearing is on the additional appropriation for the Carpenter Nature Preserve bond. And once again, Amy will explain what that is all about.
Yes, so this second public hearing tonight is on an appropriation resolution for the bond funds. So this is handling the appropriation so that you're giving the authority to spend those bond funds when they come in.
Okay. Anybody from the public wish to make a statement tonight concerning the additional appropriation for the Carpenter Nature Preserve bond? Okay, no one is stepping forward. We have no one online. So we will now close out that hearing on the additional appropriation for the Carpenter Nature Preserve bond. All right, let's continue on with the agenda then. Unless anybody has any comments or any thoughts on that.
We do have a couple of items to vote on after the public hearings closed on those two items. So the first is following the public hearing to entertain a motion to confirm the resolution associated with the declaratory resolution. So confirming that we declared that.
So what do we need to do, Amy? Do we need
I'll
to?
make a motion to confirm.
Second.
There you go. John Salowitz makes a motion. Was that Ryan that seconded that? Ryan Cambridge seconds. Let's take a roll call vote. Jill Pack.
Aye.
John Salowitz.
Aye.
Sarah Moore.
Aye.
Chris Barksdale.
Aye.
Ryan Cambridge.
Aye.
And I say aye as well.
And
Passes
this-
unanimously.
Resolution 2023-3 is the confirmatory resolution. And we have our bond counsel here tonight too. Heather James is there in case that anybody has any questions for her. She would be the expert on
Okay.
this resolution.
The second item after the first public hearing was the consideration of a final bond resolution outlining the parameters of the Carpenter Nature Preserve bond request, and that is for 5.5 million. A portion of that to be utilized for capitalized interest and the remaining funds to be used for the acquisition and development of that property. So would we'd like to request that you entertain a motion to approve those final bond resolution.
Okay, before we do that, does anybody want to ask any questions to Heather while she's here? She came all the way out here tonight in the rain. Everybody feels comfortable? Okay, do we have a motion?
Exactly.
Do we have a motion
I'll make
to,
a motion.
Go
No,
ahead, I'll second.
I'll make the motion to, what's the,
This is resolution 2023-4, the final bond resolution.
I'll make a motion for resolution 2023-4. Final bond resolution for the Carper Nature Preserve.
okay, John Salewitz makes a motion.
Second that.
Joe Pack seconds that. Let's take a roll call vote. Joe Pack,
Aye.
John Salewitz.
Aye.
Sarah Moore,
Aye.
Chris Barksdale,
Aye.
Ryan Cambridge,
Aye.
and I say aye as well. All right. Now we're ready to move on.
Nope. Finally,
We have one more
last
thing to do. Okay.
item. This is in regards to the public hearing on the additional appropriation. So
Oh,
this
okay.
would be resolution 2023-5, correct?
Yes.
The resolution of the Parks and Rec District of appropriating the proceeds of the Park District bond. So this is to allow the additional appropriation of these funds when it comes time for the sale of the bonds.
Okay. Do we have a motion to accept resolution 2023-5?
I'll make a motion.
Sarah Moore makes the motion. Ryan Cambridge seconds. Now let's take a vote. Joe Pack,
Aye.
John Salewitz,
Aye.
Sarah Moore,
Aye.
Chris Barksdale,
Aye.
Ryan Cambridge.
Aye.
I say aye as well, making it unanimous.
And we do all need to sign all three of these resolutions for you
Okay.
tonight.
All right.
All right. So we have wrapped up our work tonight on the Carpenter Nature Preserve bonding questions. Heather, are you comfortable that we've done all the right things? Great. Thank you. All right, the next item under new business is Ecological Services 2023. Jared?
For years, the Parks Department has been partnering with Ecologic in our park system to restore our native plantings, reestablish habitat, and maintain invasive species. This year, we are looking to continue some of those contracts while also remembering that we now have a natural resource technician position, which is moving some of this maintenance and care in-house. So truly allowing us to have more resources in-house for the addressing of invasive species and habitat restoration while still utilizing the professional services of Ecologic. So before you tonight are 4 contracts. The first is for the year-round routine maintenance. It'll be quarterly visits at Elm Street, and that is to maintain those prairie plantings that you'll see within the center of the park as well as the hillside. That contract for the year is $7,580.53. The next contract would be for Mulberry Fields, and this again is those planted prairie sections near the parking lot and behind to the north of the splash pad. For the contract for 4 quarterly visits totaling 4 for Mulberry Fields, that is $7,430.77. We also have a contract for Overly Warman Park. Last year, as we were beginning to open up Overly Warman for the community, we noticed a large population of poison hemlock in the park. So this is a very nasty invasive species that can actually agitate the skin quite well as it's got the name poison inside of its name. So obviously not good to ingest. So this would be for the professional services for eradicating that around our mountain bike trails. And so that would treatments here in the spring, and then there will be follow-up seasons to combat that before it really comes up and starts to bloom. So this would be a multi-year project, but this would be the first stab at that. So for Overly Warman Park, this year's ecological contract would be for $5,692.64. And finally, a success story at Zion Nature Sanctuary. After years of working with Ecologic in that park, we have a very firm foothold on the pond and surrounding areas concerning natives. So, and the eradication of invasives. So with this contract, we have the opportunity to kind of focus more on those wooded areas, removing honeysuckle and other species, and taking back more of the park now that we kind of have that foothold immediately around the pond, which we program the most. So This is progress in the fight against invasives and reclaiming our parklands. So for that contract, since it'll be slightly lighter for those 4 visits, that will be $2,269.26. All in total for these 4 contracts for the year would be $22,973.20. And within the 2023 budgeting cycle, we did anticipate 25,000 in expenditures. So slightly below that. And again, these services maintain those native plantings, remove natives if there is a monoculture happening, and make sure we have a nice biodiversity within those plantings. And then most importantly, remove those invasive species that take back those spaces once they get established. Happy to answer any questions.
How does this compare with our cost last year for Ecologic?
I believe we were closer to 28,000 last year. So again, as we have that natural resource technician, and also we're looking to explore a natural resource technician internship this year, allowing more of that work to be done in-house year round, can continue to reduce these contracts.
There's nothing they do on the around the rail trail. Those are the special projects we do. So no, we did something last year on the north side. So
There's more than enough work to be done. So we're continuing that progress. So for instance, Heritage Trail Park normally is a contract within that we continue every year. This year, we're moving the maintenance of those planted areas in-house. So that's our first big step of taking over a contract. Now concerning the rail trail, we're kind of waiting till phase 1 or the widening is done to see how much improvement they make, knocking out our invasives, and then we'll follow up behind that momentum.
Anybody have anything else? Amy, can we approve these all in one fell swoop, or do we have to take 4 different votes?
You can approve them all together.
Okay. If that's the case, I'll make a motion then that we will approve the ecologic contracts, the 4 ecologic contracts to work in our park properties this summer. Do I have a second? Ryan? Ryan Cambridge seconds. Let's go ahead and take a vote. Jill Pack,
Aye.
John Salowitz,
aye.
Sarah Moore,
Aye.
Chris Barksdale,
Aye.
Ryan Cambridge.
Aye.
And I say aye as well, making that unanimous. Thank you, Jared.
Thank you.
All right, the next item is public art.
So with the gift from the Community Foundation of Boone County last year, allowing us to create 2 murals in Zionsville, we've continued on that momentum of adding arts and culture into our park system, both in-house with our butterfly trail, which is the inspired idea of Mindy, as well as just having new projects which create new canvases for future art. So we were approached by an artist who wishes to remain anonymous, wishing to donate an installation to our park system. After discussing the scope of what they were willing to donate to the park system, the trailhead seemed like a perfect fit for this item. So I will pull that up on the screen here. Again, this is a rough interpretation of what the final product will be, but I'll explain it a little more. Okay, so I'm hoping that's up on the screens then. All right, so what we're looking at on the left is our trailhead facility. You'll notice the X square up there will be the restroom facility, and obviously the parking lot is easy to delineate. And that circle to the south in the photo is the roundabout, which will be utilized for parking. So that inner radius of the roundabout is 18 feet. And the proposed project is what you see on the right side of this photo. So it will be a large column, 12 to 14 feet tall from the center of that roundabout with 8-foot wings that actually rotate. So this will resemble that of an eagle and be able to actually modulate with the wind. So we do have 2 short videos I'll show you, kind of highlighting what those wings could do. So imagine 12 to 14 feet up in the air as the wind is blowing. This installation would actually move with the wind, creating a flying pattern, if you will, and just a nice accent to our trailhead and giving it something special. So this is being engineered and revised with a structural engineer to ensure that it can maintain the capacities of our anticipated winds and also be sturdy enough on that pole up in the air. So I have one more quick video. And this just kind of shows the full range of what we anticipate. So there would be 2 of these wings, 1 on each side, able to move along with the wind. So there's kind of closer to the full range of motion that we'd anticipate with that. So this artist is not asking for any compensation, simply if we would be wishing to accept this into our park system. If not, he would find a buyer for it in the art world. So kind of a fantastic opportunity for our park system.
What would be the cash value of something like this?
I mean, it's made of steel. I would think it would be in the tens of thousands.
Yeah, it would be tough to get it for anything less than that.
And did you ask about illuminating it?
No, it was from the crowd, but it's great.
Is it going to be illuminated at night?
That will be a change order later to talk about. If accepted.
But as it is now, it's not planned to be illuminated at night?
If we accept the donation, there's a plan to install electric underneath it that would allow for lighting it at night.
Okay.
The artist is not donating lights.
No, I understand. I understand that. Okay.
Wanted to put the cart after the horse.
I understand.
So, well, I know the artist is anonymous. Are they going to remain anonymous after it's installed?
That is their desire, yes.
Okay.
So simply just wanting to add this to our park system and bring that much more character to it.
Is it a Zionsville person?
It is. It's a Zionsville resident. They first reached out to the cultural district, who got them in touch with me, and they kind of wanted to ask what our themes might be, what might fit in our park system. And obviously we deferred to nature, Eagle Creek and things like that. And this was the concept that was presented after that. So above and beyond what I would have anticipated.
I have one question about the placement of it, the location with in the middle of a roundabout.
Mhm.
And it's just a roundabout that's only accessible from the parking lot. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. And still waiting to hear back from the fire department concerning emergency services.
Okay.
But we don't anticipate a conflict with that either.
I just picture the roundabout of it.
Oh, yeah.
That blur that keeps getting driven through.
Yeah. No, this will be isolated as from that earlier picture. It is the destination of our private parking lot off Zionsville Road.
Do you know who the artist is?
I do. Yes.
Okay. Any red flags?
No, the fact that, they're doing their homework and doing the calculations for wind load and other things is very comforting. They're working with a structural engineer right now on the base. So I think we're going to have a very solid product that is safe for the community and will last for years.
And I also mean with the artists themselves, it's fine to remain anonymous, but people will know. And is it somebody that is controversial in any way?
No,
Okay,
they just came out of the woodwork.
all right.
Haven't seen a headline.
And one thing that occurs to me, and maybe Amy, you can speak to this, what kind of liability do we have if the wind is greater than we think it is and a piece of this breaks off and injures somebody or damages some cars or property?
Right.
Are we taking on extra liability because of something like this?
We are. I mean, it would become the town parks property. We would have to add it to our insurance, make sure that our insurance covers it. And then it would cover any liability stemming from it, just as our insurance covers other liabilities. But we would need to make that step to make sure that the agent adds this to our
Yeah.
policy.
And there is some engineering to give us some,
Yes, that's small.
there would be some engineering done to give us some reasonable assurance that this is
Yes.
going to be a safe structure.
Absolutely. Yeah. We wouldn't accept it if we didn't have that certainty.
Okay.
Jared, can you tell me more about this is an odd question, but the pole that it sits on? Like, is it just a
Steel
pole?
pole that would be, have a concrete footer. And again, that would be engineered so that the concrete footer is large enough to accommodate the the structure and how that might sway in the wind.
And the intent with the height proposed is to get access to that wind, or?
I think it was so that there's minimal risk. One of the things I mentioned when the concept came was to make sure it's high enough off the ground that, you know, those that wish to touch it aren't going to be able to very easily. So that there's no risk of those wings coming down, coming into contact with someone that might venture into that roundabout, which we wouldn't want to encourage anyways, being a traffic roundabout.
If we approve this tonight, is this our last shot at this?
No, I think we could simply move forward, but at any point in the process, we could stop. And again, we did mention that the contingency that we don't accept it, and that's when he mentioned he would just sell it. So.
Would it get added to like the list of things you regularly maintain or double check,
Absolutely.
make sure it's safe still?
Yep. So part of our regular park inspections, every bolt, every moving part would be inspected.
And the donation is an in-kind donation of the material art, but not of the installation of it.
Correct. Yep. So there would be
I suppose
some.
That's the cart. It's after the horse.
That would be a subsequent change order for that concrete footing that would accommodate that. Essentially, the change order for the pedestal that it would sit in, and at the time of creation of that pedestal, it would be installed.
We don't anticipate that would be a big cost though, right?
No, it's being owner provided. It would be the labor, but that shouldn't be very nominal.
Okay.
And then you mentioned the lighting as well as an additional change order.
Yes, so we'll discuss that later in the agenda.
Okay.
All right. Anybody have any more questions? Would anyone like to make a motion that we, what's the motion, that we would accept it, or that we would take the first step toward accepting it?
Accept the donation contingent on certification of its structural integrity and cost associated with installation, I think would be fair.
All right. Would anybody like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
I will second it.
Do you want to say it, or do you want?
The motion that we accept the donation of the sculpture with all the caveats that were mentioned.
Okay. Sarah Moore makes the motion to accept the sculpture based on the or contingent upon the caveats mentioned. Joe Pack seconds, and now let's take the vote. Joe Pack,
Aye.
John Salowitz,
Aye.
Sarah Moore,
Aye.
Chris Barksdale,
Aye.
Ryan Cambridge,
Aye.
and I say aye as well. All right, passes unanimously. All right, the next item on the agenda is the Winterfest 2022 review. Jared, do you want to get us started there?
Yes. 1 second here, booting up. I have a very brief presentation to accompany this. All right. So this is the second year of the Winterfest celebration, which transforms Mulberry Fields in December, when there's limited use around our park system, into an activated park with an ice rink, community celebrations, showcases, and events throughout the month. So how did we get to Winterfest? Well, it all began with our 2021 program study. From that study, we were able to ask the community what most they wanted to see in their parks and recreation system, specifically in our recreation branch. So Zionsville parks have a strong history of natural education, but we knew there was a hunger for more of that traditional recreation side. And this study suspected just to that hypothesis. So among that 2021 study, we developed the recreation coordinator position, which was able to implement more traditional recreation programs. We had our introduction to pickleball and many other activities throughout the year, infusing fitness, wellness, culture, and arts into our park system, while we still continue that strong tradition of nature education. So from the study, the items most requested by our community, both in the Survey Monkey study as well as the statistically valid ETC study, were outdoor events, the second being outdoor recreation, the third fitness and wellness, and finally cultural performances. And as we look over to the graph on the left of the screen, the top priorities for investment for our programs based on the priority investment rating that was established within the report were also outdoor events, fitness and wellness, and outdoor recreation. So from this plan, not only did we begin to branch out in our recreation division of our programming, but we also decided to tackle our first large community event with Winterfest, activating at a time when there's limited things to do outside and providing an opportunity for our community to reconnect as we began to emerge from the pandemic. So Winterfest was created for the past 2 years and has ran in Mulberry Fields, as I mentioned, but it is not only an ice rink. There's also community events that are free to attend. There's celebrities like Santa Claus or the Indy Fuel mascot that stop by, and other programming to keep people coming back all month long. So this year, the rink, we did have 4,649 skaters attend in the 4 weeks that the rink was open. Now, unfortunately, we did have 6 dates that were heavily impacted by inclement weather. Central Indiana, December's, it's either going to be snow and below 0, or it's going to be rain and in the 60s. And in our 2 years of this program, we've experienced both now. So certainly there are some variables that are beyond our control, but there's several lessons that we learned in the first year that we were able to implement for this year, including the tents, which were able to house our operations and provide more warming for our guests, as well as upgraded facilities in our restroom facilities. So we had a heated trailer that was very much welcomed, and a slightly larger rink. But again, this is more than just an ice rink. This is also an opportunity for our community to come together. So among the community showcases, which took place on our stage, we had over 2,800 attendees enjoy those performances. Performers among the likes of Bach to Rock, the Glee Club, Social Distance, Friends Dance Company, and the Pleasant View Elementary cast of the Frozen Junior play. So again, just an opportunity for our community to gather free of charge and enjoy events and programming. And back to our programming, it began with the Frozen Fete ball and extended throughout the season with themed nights of the rink, like our Stranger Things themed night, visits from celebrities, Santa Claus, reindeer, and the Indy Fuel, as well as an opportunity for our community to meet the town employees that make our community run, both with visits from our fire department as well as the Meet the Town event, which hosted a fun rivalry between our police and our fire of who could show up in more support. We also had our first Makers Mart, which had an astounding attendance cannot remember the number of vendors that we had this year, but afterwards, after the market, we did connect with those vendors and they were very happy with the turnout, as well as that was one of the most identified things in the 2022 follow-up survey, was that they really appreciated the market and would like to see more of those in subsequent years. So the financials of the event, our expenses, the prime contract was $230,000 and $726.63. And our subsequent contracts, this is the restrooms, the forklifts, the lighting, the tent rentals, that was $62,125.78 for a grand total of $292,852.41. Now, from the revenue side of things, our ice rink, with those 6 days dampened, did produce $66,606. Our programming was able to bring in $12,316, and our sponsorships brought in $15,000 in cash and $5,000 in kind. So among those operational costs, the cost recovery of the event itself was 32%, and just utilizing days immediately next to the dates that were impacted by weather, we can estimate that we missed out on about $13,795 in revenue, which would have been more revenue than last year's operations. So where did these funds come from? The 32% cost recovery is obviously funds created this year. And the majority of the deficit came from our cash reserves within our Fund 211 programming fund. So that is throughout the year, as program fees come in, those revenues are collected and then repurposed for programs. So of the general fund, so this program is subsidized at this time from those as well. It was about $6.42 this year per resident, sorry. But again, speaking of that program.
Well, let's hold on 1 second before we move on from the revenue and expenses. I think the elephant in the room is the payment that was misdirected to Ice America. And I know that Amy has a comment to make about that tonight.
Yes, sure. The park board has an agreement with Ice America to operate the ice skating rink at Winterfest, and the park board authorizes and makes payments to Ice America for their services pursuant to that agreement. Regarding the November 2022 payment, the town previously received an email from Scott Williams, who's the founder and CEO of Ice America, directing the town to make payment via electronic transfer. The email originated from Mr. Williams' official Ice America email account. The email also copied another Ice America employee on that email. The town had no reason to suspect any fraud with the email instructions coming from Mr. Williams' Ice America email account. When the town was made aware of the potential fraud with Mr. Williams' email, the town took diligent steps to address the matter, offering to work with Ice America. The town filed a complaint with the FBI and with the town's bank. The town's also been cooperating with the Zionsville Police Department and has provided information at the request of the Indiana State Police. So this is an ongoing investigation. In anticipation of any potential litigation involving this matter, we're limiting public comments about this and may in the future have a need to schedule an executive session if the board needs to discuss further or in more detail.
Obviously, a very highly vetted statement. You don't want to entertain any further discussion about that in this meeting.
Not in this meeting. I think that that would be more appropriate in executive session.
Okay, so the statement stands on its own. All right, Jared, do you want to continue?
So where those cash reserves came that paid for the majority of that deficit, that is from our recreation programming fund. So throughout the year, there are a plethora of programs that are within that fund. And if you'll recall, early 2021, we discussed the methodology for creating a sustainable programming fund that can stand on its own. So increasing our cost recovery in some programs while still continuing to provide free and accessible programs to the community as well. So it's a balancing act. So among a few of those items that do support the recreation program fund, we have our garden plot program, which has minimal overhead. So that is able to operate as a positive. Our shelter reservations, which truly just have soft costs associated with maintenance and the installation of those signs for each reservation. So last year with over 250 shelter reservations, that program brought in $10,000, which immediately goes into our recreation programming. As well as we have our nature programming, which as I mentioned, has been the backbone of our park system for years, charging very few fees, mainly to organize groups and classrooms for their programming, and then retaining those fees for future programs. We have our special events, which Winterfest is one of them, but we also have Barns and Brews, and that portfolio will continue to expand as well to identify new opportunities to enhance the wellness of our community. As I mentioned, in 2021, 2022, we began the recreational programming side of our department. So within 2022, the recreation side was able to bring in $12,685 on its own. So that is a collection of pickleball fees, that's Barns and Brews, that's Winterfest programming separate from the ice rink and other items like that. Our summer camps have been the strong backbone of our summer programming for many years. The nature side of our summer camps brought in $6,709. And our recreation side, I think it was, sorry, I didn't write that one down, but I'm pretty sure it was around 6,000. Sorry, Nature Center was 6,000, recreation was around 4,000. And finally, our dog park, those funds go into Fund 211, but are primarily for the maintenance and upkeep of the dog park. And then our grants and sponsorships. Every year we have successfully received grants to assist with our programming and operations. And over the past 2 years, we have greatly increased our sponsorship presence in the community. In 2022, bringing in over $23,000 in sponsorships for our programming. So all of these together work to provide free and minimal fee programming for our community. And these are the majority of the funds that supported the deficit of Winterfest for this year. So obviously our goal is for Winterfest not to be a detriment to this fund, but in turn work towards a more sustainable cost recovery model, as well as potentially breaking even and then being a generator for our programming community. And there are steps that we can take towards that goal. So in 2023, if we move forward with the Winterfest event, a contract will be before you in the subsequent months. We have the opportunity to move operations in-house. So for the past 2 years, we have been reliant on outside contractors to not only supply the equipment of the ice rink, but also the operations, and that's ticket booth as well as enforcement of rules on the ice. After 2 years of watching this program grow, we can confidently work among the community of Parks and Rec individuals around the country to find the best practices for operations of the rink, as well as the institutional knowledge we've gained talking with Ice America over the past 2 years, our patrons, as well as working with the chiller and other equipment. So we are confident after this season, Mindy, Chris and I spoke and are happy to move those operations in-house. We do have within our budget a part-time line that can accommodate that additional staffing that'll be required for manning the ticket booth, as well as maintaining the functionality of the event. Also, if we move the operations in-house, we will be able to reduce the processing fees associated with Winterfest. So those revenues I showed you were the net revenue and not the gross. So every transaction that was held within Winterfest had obviously a fee associated with it, with processing that payment. That fee is larger than what our MyRec established fee is for our program. So we would also be able to save a little bit on the revenue coming into our facility. By moving operations into our house, we anticipate we would be able to save $70,000 to $81,000 off of the total cost of the event, just like that. Obviously, soft costs with staffing and other things like that. We also would look to move concessions in-house. While those would be limited, we did attempt to establish concessions this year, and it was received exceptionally well. Simply having bottles of water, hot coffee and hot chocolate and bags of chips were very welcomed throughout the Winterfest event when we were in between food trucks. So we have enjoyed partnering with the food truck community, and we will continue to do that in events in the future. But the consistency of a concession stand was one of the highest things recommended as well in the survey at the end of the year. Beginning to do a little research, now that we can look at only renting the equipment rather than equipment in operations, that opens us up to a few other vendors where we could potentially receive these ice rink services in the future. So speaking with another company, we could receive the equipment for up to 7 weeks at the same rate as anytime lower than 7 weeks. And so with those extra 3 weeks, based on the last 2 years' revenue, that would be between $13,000 and $15,000 a week that we could additionally generate. And that's taking the totals or the averages of days before school let out, because again, that would be back when school's in session. So an opportunity to increase our revenue, increase our season without increasing our costs and actually decreasing our costs. And now that the ice rink is moved in-house, working with our insurance to ensure that obviously we would have the opportunity to increase the programmings that we could offer. So that would allow us to reduce the cost of our private rentals, making that more equitable for groups and community members that want to have birthday parties, work gatherings, and the like. So we're working on that new figure. We also discussed having a reservable area during the event. So if a family wants to have a birthday party, but not reserve the whole rink, they could have a dedicated spot for items to come in, secure their stuff, and enjoy the rink alongside the public. And we would be also able to do what we do best, and that is add more programming. Be able to offer ice skating lessons to those that have never put on a pair of skates, as well as introduce new and fun programming like broom ball, which we have a very eager recreation coordinator that would love to tell you all about that activity. So that is a recap of 2022's Winterfest and how this event could move on in a sustainable manner to become more cost effective for our programming fund. Happy to answer any questions. Obviously, this does not commit us to anything tonight. That contract would come at a future time.
I have a question or a comment and a question, I guess, if no one else does. First of all, I think that in my experience as a recreation planner, park designer, whatever you want to call me, ice rinks are a tricky one because they're just so expensive to operate. And I think that sometimes expectations of cost recovery exceed maybe what is realistic for those sorts of amenities. When you don't take into account the sort of the intrinsic value of sense of place and community building, and all those things that happen at those types of events that our residents have vocally said they really love and appreciate. So I think as we go forward, I know I'm new to this board, but as we go forward talking about what it looks like next year, I think maybe looking at some best practices for ice rink cost recovery in our region with our climate and rinks of that size, so that we can just make sure that whatever expectations others might have of you beyond this board are reasonable. And then second, I guess it would be a question is that you talk about adding more programming, which we're excellent at. You guys do an excellent job at that. When I went through the comments of what people liked the least, which then I would use to say, well, what should we work on right next year? You know, almost 30% or so of the comments are kind of related to non-ice activities. So places to sit that are warm, concessions, food vendors, market stalls, ambiance, placemaking, right, is what it comes down to me. I was there this year. The rink looked great. I didn't have any issues with the vendor. Like, you know, it all went fine to me. But if you weren't skating, there wasn't really much for you to do but be there and watch someone else skate. So as you guys think about next year, I think there's a lot of things that we could do to activate the space that wouldn't cost a lot of money or require a lot of structured programming, because you're already very good at that. So I think look for opportunities maybe for more passive, self-directed, place-based activities in addition to structured programming.
Thank you.
And I will not probably be here when you vote on the next contract. So this is just for whatever it's worth, my thoughts. And I think, because I agree with everything that was just said. And I think that the reason that we all are looking at the cost and, you know, how it stands up to expectations is because each year the plan is that it's going to be revenue neutral. And so maybe the idea is to decide if that's really what the goal is, or what is the goal here. And if it is to be revenue neutral, then I'm hoping there would be more math to support that. Like if we do, because everything that you had mentioned to make it more cost effective for us involves putting more into it. It involves spending more money to make more money. And I would want to know, say, if we did concessions, well, you know, how does that really work out? How many concessions would we have to sell to hit a target number? And that's got to include the cost of the people, additional people there to sell it. And just see more of the details of the math that would make it revenue neutral, if that is the goal. Because I do think there is a lot to be said for placemaking and for creating an experience for our community that draws people together.
Absolutely. Well, as I've thought about this, I've thought that you know, I would never expect it to be completely revenue neutral. You know, there's always going to be a cost associated with it. And it seems to me that in a few years, when that facility expands out there, if we add more pickleball courts, if we add a building that we can use for concessions, a permanent standing building, a permanent restroom facility that's going to be year round, that some of these things will take care of themselves, but we have to get there first. And I wonder if we might consider putting Winterfest on pause for a couple of years until the facilities catch up with what our ideas are. Because to get there might be, you know, we might be losing a lot of revenue in the next couple of years until we get to the point where we have the facilities to support the vision. We've talked about putting the cart before the horse. Maybe that's the cart and the horse we need to consider. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. I guess we can close out the conversation about Winterfest. And so what's the plan? Are you going to come back later this year with a proposal, or are we going to think about it as the year goes on and have another proposal in the summer?
We're going to take the comments from tonight, more statistical data to support how that's going to become more cost neutral. One slide I didn't share tonight was from that study plan, you know, an event that has a fair balance of community and individual benefit would be around that 50 to 70% cost recovery range. So again, when we propose this next season, that would consider those parameters, how we would achieve those goals and where the funds would be to subsidize that remaining portion. So a little bit more legwork on our part to gather all that data, and we're more than happy to do that. But I just want to say, you know, we are a seed that is sprouting, and I have no doubt that this could become a giant oak, but it does need to be done in a responsible manner to get there. I completely agree. And each year as that site does develop, that is going to allow it to become more cost effective on its own. So simply having a restroom facility that would support the multi sport fields that are out there today, those leagues that come out and play, having that facility year round would take off $4,500 from this year's costs, just like that. So again, using what we have to grow, and I completely agree with that as well. So I also think it's important to mention that this is, as I mentioned, a seed program, much like our golf course, which is doing absolutely phenomenal now. And we have no intentions of slowing that momentum. We have a fantastic staff out there that continue to improve that course, but that wasn't always the case. So that is kind of the success story of where we can be as we invest in these programs and facilities. So we will provide a much more comprehensive picture of our operations if we proceed in 2023.
Also, I would like to say, it'd be nice to have more advanced information about it. I felt like the last 2 years was like, wait, we got to vote on this now or we're going to miss it. You know, wish it would have, you know, presented the idea the month before, so we had something to think about and move forward to. It was always seemed to be rushed. We got to do this. We're not going to get this contract. We're going to move on to someone else. So I just asked if we get a little better information prior to having to make a resolution to spend a bunch of money. So
okay, we can do that.
I also wanted to note that it seems like people really like the makers market. So if you do end up putting it on pause, there's no reason one couldn't go on without the other.
Oh yeah, we don't sit idle. So if this weren't to happen, we would still fill December. Absolutely.
Sure.
Is there data from any surrounding towns or other Midwestern places that do something similar and have for some amount of time that have shown how long does it take before you get to a point where you're a little more comfortable with the difference?
So our as we began to develop this program in 2021, we did work with an outside party that did provide some revenue estimates. So we had a different picture, and then obviously being the first year, you know, expectations were different than that projection. So hoping as the event grew, it would attract more of those people as we were able to market it better. And certainly the weather didn't do us any favors this year, but yeah, I agree. Reaching out to other similar facilities and discussing it with them as well.
Did that report include any revenue or cost recovery benchmarking versus just projections?
Just projections at that point.
Because I think that would be helpful. You know, I think I think if we're going to make it go, no go on this at some point in the future, we need to be data based and informed on like what realistic cost recovery is. You know, because I think, you know, the pursuit of recapturing as much cost as possible is a great one, but this is an animal when it comes to an event. But it's also a really good, it can be a really good one. And I think I'm reiterating what I said earlier, but, you know, the reason I think this year that there may have been some of the feedback we got is that if you're not a skater or weren't skating, you didn't have the same experience that a skater had. Because if you were skating on the rink, you know, the rink was nice, was lighted, you know, there was, I mean, I thought it was pretty well maintained, you know, it was great. But if you're sitting outside, you're probably cold, you could be hungry or thirsty, you know, there's not a fire. You know, I just think there's a lot that could be done to really make the appeal of that space, increase the audience, right? That would be willing to come out and spend money there. That's going to help with that cost recovery. That doesn't necessarily have to do with the ice itself.
So why don't we put a note in the file, maybe to talk about this again in July? Would July be reasonable, or June?
We'll probably shoot for April because the contract would probably need to come in June or July.
Okay, so June, do we think that's a reasonable time to pick this up again, have a discussion in this meeting and decide whether or not we're going to go
We'll
forward?
bring additional findings in April, and then we can Yeah, because there's usually cost savings if you secure your equipment before a certain date. And I think traditionally that has been July 1.
I know, but I think to John's point, we
Yes.
need to have an ongoing discussion. It can't just be, wait till the end and. all of a
Correct,
sudden
yes. I'm proposing getting that information as early as April.
Great.
And then we'll
Great.
have multiple months to discuss that.
Right. And make sure we have decisions made by the summer,
Yes.
by the end of the summer. Okay. Anybody else have any comments or any thoughts on that? Okay. All right, let's move on then to the Mulberry Fields, Sports Fields agreements.
So 3 sports field agreements to consider tonight. One of our first priorities in the recent years while bringing life back into our park system was to reconnect with the groups that warranted Mulberry Fields in the first place. That facility was built for youth sports and those organizations to utilize that space. So for the past 2 years, we've enjoyed those partnerships and we look forward to bringing them back this year. We have 3 groups that wish to utilize Mulberry Fields throughout the spring, and that is the Zionsville High School Boys Rugby Club, the Zionsville Middle School Boys Rugby Club, and the Zionsville Little League. So Zionsville Little League has outgrown Lions Park, and they are desperately looking for more places to practice and play. And we were more than happy to provide that space with Mulberry Fields last year, and happy to see them coming back. And there's a long history of rugby out at Mulberry Fields, and I don't think they want to go anywhere else. We're very happy with that situation as well. So for these agreements, we charge $5 per field per rental. So over a season, that's just a couple of $100, which is very reasonable for a sport facility. We utilize those funds to maintain the field, and then any excess revenue does go back into that recreation fund for programming to our community.
Do we know what the cost, our annual cost is to maintain the athletic field portion of Mulberry Fields?
So there is minimal prescriptive maintenance at this time. If you were a professional in the sports management of facilities, you would notice, there's clover and other species that don't really belong on multi-use sports fields. So truly, it is just the mowing of the grounds, the irrigation systems and the like. So as we continue to develop capacity, we want to make those facilities pristine, and then maybe that cost equation would change. But at this time, it's truly covering seed and things like that.
I'm curious, why do these always have to go against the board to approve the usage? Obviously it was built for this.
Yeah.
And I know there's, legal contracts and such, but what's the, reason why every one of these have to come in front of us?
The underlying reason is just the liability. So this is proving that these organizations have insurance policies, both naming themselves as well as the town and park board as insured should an incident occur. So with that consideration, we developed this template last year to kind of expedite this process, and that's what's before you this evening. So we will do this every year as these organizations come.
I guess, I'm 100% in favor of activating a space that was built specifically for that purpose. But I also feel like that the fees that we're charging are extremely low.
And that
For organizations that make a pretty fair amount of money off of the participants that are in them. So I think there's always a fine balance, right? Of, we are our goal is to sort of facilitate recreation and provide as low cost opportunities as we can. But I think where I start to look at that from an equity standpoint is, we're subsidizing something for a company that's already charging kids hundreds of dollars per season to play. So as we talk about cost recovery more holistically across the system and different events, I think we need to look at where else we're willing to, absorb some utility or offset some of those costs in addition to just finding ways to make expensive events cheaper.
absolutely.
All right, do we need to make a motion to approve?
Yes.
And we can do this in one fell swoop too,
Yes.
approve all the contracts at one time. Okay, does anybody have a motion to approve the contracts with the various sports leagues, the rugby, high school rugby club, the junior or middle school rugby club, and ZLL?
I'll make a motion to accept the rugby clubs, high school, middle school, and Zionsville youth baseball.
We have a motion from John Solis. We have a second.
Second.
Chris Barksdale seconds. Let's take a vote. Jill Pack,
Aye.
John Salowitz,
Aye.
Sarah Moore,
Aye.
Chris Barksdale,
Aye.
Ryan Cambridge.
Aye.
And I say aye as well. And it's good to have those fields being used by local sports leagues again. I think that's an admirable goal. And I think the revenue is something we need to maybe take a look at in future years, but I think it's good that we're taking this step. So I'm glad that's getting done. All right. Any other new business, Jared?
No, that's all the new business.
Okay. And now we'll move on to old business. The rail trail widening phase 1.
So the rail trail widening began in January with clearing markers staked and the project bounds kind of determined. It was at that time we received several concerns about the project, especially as it pertained to Spring Knoll and the neighbors that are along the entire rail trail, certainly our closest neighbors. So we paused the project as it backed up to their homes in certain stations and allowed the project to continue outside of those parameters while we continue to work with these residents. So tonight there are 2 change orders before you. The first is for realigning the trail as it pertains to those houses. So we are widening this trail 2 feet wider and we'll have the 2-foot earthen shoulder on each side. This realignment is simply the administrative fees of reprogramming their excavators to change the center line of where the project was. And that will shift it more, 2 feet away from that house rather than the center line of where it was set today. So kind of a middle ground concession to understand their privacy and the impact this will have to their yards and their expectations, as well as allowing the project to continue to move forward while finding a win-win for all community members. So in order to accommodate that change, there is a change order for $5,842.06. And again, that would be the administrative costs associated with reprogramming that excavation unit.
So it's pushing the trail to the, that's what, southwest?
Southeast, northwest.
Yeah, right.
So the houses, if you're going north on the trail or to your right, this would shift that widening to the left. So
Moving closer to like Carter Station.
yes, exactly.
And closer by 2 feet.
Correct. So the widening, the kind of where the edge of pavement is now, that'll remain. And then the 2 feet expansion will be solely on that other side. Whereas throughout most of the trail, it's a foot on each side.
And this is just through that one section?
Yes, it's
$5,000 to program for that one section.
I was kind of entertained to learn that it is a computer running the show for the most part with excavators anymore.
By satellites and.
Yeah. So they put in that information when the contract was awarded. And this is the administration and reprogramming of that because they do contract that out for that reprogramming portion.
And are there concerns on that other side from homeowners along there or?
No, we have spoke with the Cobble Lakes community and they are in full support of this. This really won't have any impact nearly as much as it would on the other side where those houses, there's very small amount of common space before these houses. And there's also not the vegetative buffer, which is kind of experienced throughout the entire corridor. In that particular segment, you can see the trail from those houses and vice versa. So kind of the middle ground for a win-win for this portion.
Where's the funds coming from?
So the contract currently is, we have a $29,000 credit since we removed the dog park in anticipation of some of the undercuts we had. So this would come from that surplus, wrong word for that.
And I think we should make the note too, what we're getting here is a trail that's going to be uniform and 12 feet wide the whole way. An alternative might have been to keep it narrower, keep it 10 feet wide there. So have a choke point basically, which I don't think would be a good solution in any way, shape or form. So it's nice that the trail will remain uniform at 12 feet. And it seems that this will accommodate the concerns and get us the trail that we want to have. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and make the motion that we accept this. We can take this change order first.
Yes.
That we accept this change order for the trail widening phase 1 to shift the trail a couple of feet to the, what did we say it was? Northwest, northeast.
Northwest.
Northwest, from southeast to
We're
northwest.
dealing with triangles, so it's not true north.
Right, yeah.
Right, okay. So that's the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Joel Pack seconds. All right, let's take a roll call vote. Joel Pack,
Aye.
John Salowitz,
Aye.
Sarah Moore,
Aye.
Chris Barksdale,
Aye.
Ryan Cambridge,
Aye.
and I say aye as well. So let the record show it passes unanimously. All right, and a couple of items in the trailhead.
One more item for the widening. This was just discovered today. I hope you had a chance to check your emails. I apologize if you didn't. To keep this project moving, it was identified that we are experiencing a lot of groundwater at a portion of our trail just north of Mulberry Tunnel. As to be expected, as you can imagine, this area has always been wet. Perhaps there's an underground spring or something that's allowing kind of a surplus of water even in between rain events. So in order for this trail to be successful, I have to recommend that we do it right now so that it'll last longer. So in order to have a successful trail in this section, this would require an undercut of about 160 feet. So as these undercuts happen, just as it did with the north, the conditions of that segment of trail are not meeting the roll inspection or the compaction that we need to have a viable paving and successful trail. So what it does is it excavates that earth and puts down additional stone. And then our trail base is on top of that additional stone and then the paving. So ultimately fortifying this area and those larger stones underneath are going to allow that water to travel as it wishes to get to those drainage ditches to keep moving out from under our trail. So this change order tonight is for 160 feet of undercut on our phase one of our widening, and that would be for $12,350. If you accept this change order as well as the previous, we would still have a credit of $10,889.82 from the original contract. So still in the black, fortunately, but that additional contingency is quickly getting eaten up.
So this is near where, like, with the church, the water, the drainage that was done there. So this is a continuation further down the trail from that.
Yeah, so these issues kind of begin right after the Mulberry Tunnel. So when they were doing the drainage improvement, which reestablished that bank for the church, they kind of tore up the rail trail there. If you walked it in between projects, you might have noticed that pavement was destroyed. And that's partially because the base was not as solid as it was throughout the rest of the corridor. So that might have been our early tell, but obviously once they began excavating, the true tell came out, which is not uncommon. This happens. I mean, this happened. We were very fortunate with the Southern Rail Trail that this didn't happen at all. But as I mentioned on the Northern expansion, it happened twice.
Are we into our contingency yet?
Yes, we're dipping into our contingency, but with the credit, you know, we still are 10,000 in the black on this contract. Making me sweat? Yes, absolutely.
Anybody have any?
Phase two, right?
I still have phase two.
I mean, to me, this is non-optional.
Yeah.
Truly,
I mean,
yes.
You could debate other, moving the trail or things like that, but it makes no sense to build a high quality trail on a poor base.
I make a
Right.
motion to approve the change order for the undercut, 120 feet. Is that what it was?
160.
160?
Yep.
Okay, John Salowitz makes a motion. Ryan Cambridge seconds a motion. Any further discussion? Joel Pack,
Aye.
John Salowitz,
Aye.
Sarah Moore,
Aye.
Chris Barksdale,
Aye.
Ryan Cambridge.
Aye.
I say aye as well. That passes unanimously as well. All right, now we're on to the trailhead.
Yes.
Okay.
So the first change order associated with the trailhead, as you'll remember, we did move the prefabricated building to a stick-built building on site with our contractor, and that did award us a $73,000 credit, which was very welcomed. In discussing the new building that's proposed further, there was a floor drain that was not in the central component of those restrooms. So that's just going to cause our maintenance team to have to struggle a little bit more as we clean those out for the next 50 plus years, as well as there was no drain inside the back maintenance closet, which does have a sink and other items like that. So this small change order is to reestablish those floor drains in the center of each of those rooms, as well as installing one within the maintenance closet. So for those relocations, as well as the new drain, the total would be $1,300.63. And this will pay dividends in the long run with our maintenance and upkeep of this building.
And the only reason they're not there now is because the prior structure was envisioned as a prefab drop in on top of a slab.
Correct. And there are drains now. They're just not in a central location.
Oh, I see.
So being able to slope the floors to the middle is going to be much easier, save a lot of time. And then there was not a drain in the maintenance closet.
Got it.
One spill and we'll wish there was.
These are floor drains, correct?
Yes, correct. Yep. And our maintenance of these buildings, to expedite that, on top of maintaining 500 acres, these facilities take a little TLC for sanitizing and cleaning. So our method right now is to spray a sanitizing foam that is scrubbed in and then completely rinsed out with a hose. So these drains are vital to the success of our operations with that upkeep.
Any further questions about that? And we need a motion for this as well.
Yes.
Yes. Would anybody like to make a motion that we accept this change order?
So moved.
Ryan Cambridge makes a motion. We have a second.
Second.
Chris Barksdale seconds. All right, let's take a vote. If there are no further comments or questions, Jill Pack,
Aye.
John Salowitz,
Aye.
Sarah Moore,
Aye.
Chris Barksdale,
Aye.
Ryan Cambridge.
Aye.
I say aye as well. All right, passes unanimously.
And one final change order for the trailhead. With the anticipation of the public art installation, we have an opportunity before electric is run to also run that to the center column of that roundabout. So the change order before you is for $6,760, and that would be to trench over, well, not trench, but bore over electrical service to the middle of the roundabout. So should we not move forward with the public art installation, this could always be a great place for a flag that's lit or just any other electrical needs within that roundabout or promotions. So even if plan A is not what happens, this would still be a successful amenity to add to the site for future programming or installations.
This sounds expensive to me.
Mhm.
I don't know if Tricia, if you can comment on that. Seems like a lot for a wire, basically.
Yeah, so it's power. It's also a pedestal that'll have just a normal 120 outlet on it. The normal duplex, and it's all embedded in concrete in case someone were to jump the curb or cut through that. So it's got the concrete for the reinforcement, that pedestal, and the conduit to get over to the center of that turnaround.
Tricia, would you say it's fair that the cost of all of that is substantially increased now because we're having to bore underneath existing pavement and around utilities? Like if this were done earlier, it'd be easier, but that's part of the cost, right?
Yeah, and not really, because they had planned to bore anyway.
Oh, they were gonna bore anyway.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So the boring should, most of the cost comes in concrete. Concrete
Okay.
just costs more right now than,
Sure.
well, it really should. But that is, and we could look at, we wouldn't have to have the pedestal. We could just do electric and that would save some cost. It is nice just to have that, reinforced pedestal there in the middle with your outlets, your 120 outlets. You have somebody out there with a speaker, they can plug it in. You've got a 5K, somebody's running it from the turnaround, you can plug it in. So there are some conveniences with it. And the price, just looking at the length and the, doing the calculations does look fair. It does meet all the unit prices.
Are we into our contingency on that project, Jared?
No, thanks to that credit of changing from the pre-built to the stick-built, we're still doing well on the trailhead.
So we still have some money to work with that we could use without adding to the original cost.
Correct. Absolutely.
All right. Any further discussion on that? Would anyone like to make a motion to approve this change order, allowing power to get to the pedestal of the roundabout?
I will make that motion to approve the change order for $6,760 to take Electricity to the center of the roundabout.
Okay, Jill Pack makes a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Is that Ryan? Ryan Cambridge makes a second. Let's take a vote. If there's no further discussion, Jill Pack,
Aye.
John Salowitz,
Aye.
Sarah Moore,
Aye.
Chris Barksdale,
Aye.
Ryan Cambridge,
Aye.
and I say aye as well.
Sorry, one more item that's associated with the rail trail projects. As these expansions come to an end, we do want to ensure that we are separating our pedestrian traffic from our vehicular traffic. So we want to install bollards throughout the new connections. So that would be at 400 South at the northern expansion. We'll install 2 bollards, one on each end of the trail. Again, at 850 at the intersection there, establishing 2 at 875 where they previously have not been. And we have had reports, one vehicle driving on there by accident, their Google Maps sent them onto the rail trail. So ensuring that that does not happen again, as well as moving to our southern expansion, installing these on Lemberger Drive. So that's the road that comes into Von Terra, one on each side, and then one ultimately at the rail trail just south of our trailhead. So no cars from Zionsville Road can make it onto that trail, that 15-foot wide trail. So this is just a security measure. This would be the purchase of 10 bollards. So since our 2019 quote, our bollards have gone up 30%, which wasn't necessarily out of line with what we've seen across the industry. So in order to recoup some of those costs, we are proposing purchasing 10 of those bollards tonight. That's when we begin to receive the bulk rate and have a little cost savings as far as the quantity of each unit. So I apologize, I didn't have this printed off, but I was able to circulate that. I hope you were able to look at that quote as well.
Jared, sorry, what's the total number of bollards required?
So there will be 10 bollards and 9 of them will be used on the rail trail.
And the 10th one will be used at the trailhead, or is it just an extra one?
That's an extra one, but we've already got a plan for that because we've noticed some vehicular activity in one of our parks.
So all these bollards will be installed by,
Those will be installed in-house by our
In-house,
maintenance crew. Yep,
not part of the expansion.
correct. Yep. We can certainly complete that task in-house.
Jared, it's my understanding that Von Terra, we're still committed to donating a bollard.
Yes.
Is that factored into that equation? I mean, I literally saw emails today, like we're getting ready to order it soon, so.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull that up real quick. So we were going to purchase the 10, and then as you mentioned, the Von Terra subdivision has offered to pay for one of those. So we will just accept that as a donation to our donation fund, and these funds will come out of our general fund, park improvement line.
Got it. So we should not order the bollard then.
Please don't. I'm trying to save you some money. Okay. And I was able to send this out. I hope you had a chance to look at it. So for the 8 bollards, or sorry, 10 bollards, we are able to receive approximately an $80 discount per unit. So the total for the 10 bollards is $8,312. And that would come out of our general fund park improvements line. And those are the funds that transfer year to year into our non-reverting capital fund. Each year, the annual appropriation of that is $314,000. Happy to answer any questions, but in my professional opinion, this is not really a debate. This is a safety measure.
Yeah, these are standard and
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, need to be there. So.
Okay, if there's no further comment, does anybody have a motion to approve the proposal to purchase 10 bollards for the use of the rail trail?
So moved.
Chris Barksdale makes a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Ryan Cambridge seconds. And now let's take a vote. Jill Pack,
Aye.
John Salowitz,
Aye.
Sarah Moore,
Aye.
Chris Barksdale,
Aye.
Ryan Cambridge,
Aye.
and I will say aye as well on the bollards. Thank you. All right. Anything that doesn't cost us money, Jared?
Yes, I have one other board related item, and that is the confirmation of the 2023 Park Board meeting schedule.
Yeah.
So we've been meeting at 7 o'clock on the second Wednesdays of the month. And this is just to confirm that we want to continue that. So
Yeah,
just
we did talk about this in January. We just never made the
correct.
official approval of that. So I'll go ahead and make a motion that we accept the schedule as laid out by the town, that we meet every second Wednesday of the month from now to the end of the year. Do we have a second?
Second.
Ryan Cambridge seconds. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Okay, that motion carries unanimously. Do you have anything else, Jared?
All I have.
You're good? Okay. The next item on the agenda then is claims. Has everyone had a chance to take a look at the claims? And are there any questions or comments concerning the claims?
Well, there was HIS, so they getting close to closing up, finishing up with that payments for is.
Yes, so there are a couple of punch list items. Most of them are weather dependent. So we're just trying to work with them to close out that project.
Is that part of what we held back, or is that still, our holdback still?
Yeah, we still have plenty of retainage for that project, being a multi-million-dollar project. Yep. We are keeping their feet to the fire. They have been making progress out there. If you drive in the Von Terra subdivision, you'll notice the entrance to the rail trail. The apron skirt that was damaged during construction has been formed up and will be poured as weather allows. They're also making other concrete improvements in the Overly Warman Park. So they are acting in good faith to get this wrapped up.
Okay. Any other questions?
I just had a comment on Overly Warman. Some of the asphalt repair and patching that they did in the late fall or the early winter. It looks like most of the full depth or even the mill and resurface replacements are okay. But some of the shallow holes or divots that presumably they caused with their equipment, they filled with like a Home Depot style asphalt filler that is already degrading as would be expected. So is that something that is still on the punch list?
Yes, so they did make that attempt, but we have not signed off on that.
Okay,
So
great.
With that, then, do we have a motion to accept the claims as presented?
I make a motion to accept the claims as presented.
John Sailor makes a motion to accept the claims. Second,
Second.
Jill Pack seconds. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. Before we adjourn, I just want to remind everybody the next meeting will be March 8th. And we have much paperwork to sign tonight before leaving, so please do that before you leave the room. And with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Ryan Cambridge makes a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Who is that? Sarah? Sarah Moore makes a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thanks, everybody. We'll see you again next month.
thank you.